And hello, everyone, and welcome to Magical Journey. I am your host, Daniel Cahoon, and today I'm really, I gotta tell you, it's a good day. That's where we're going to start off at. Okay, before we get started, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. You guys go over and check out magicaljourney.com. It's my website. It is where you can find all of the information on social media, how to contact me, getting readings from me. I do readings now. There's some extra stuff on there, guest appearances that I've made in the past on other shows. You can check those out, and you can find out where to see all the playlists for the show. Always a good place to be. And this show is brought to you by Magical Merch, my merch store. So go over and drop it into that from the website as well. There is all kinds of good stuff over there for y'all to enjoy, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, please do not forget tonight to like, share, comment, and if you have not yet, sub to the show. All of this helps me go and grow, and it helps me to become a much happier, pleasant person in the world. And it gives you guys the opportunity to be part of a very good cause. Okay, tonight, my friends, I am so excited. You guys don't know. I love my guests. I always love my guests. Tonight, I have a guest who is very near and dear to me, a good friend, an incredible partner in crime, so to say, with our stories, with our desire to help make things much better in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm bringing you to Michael Kameron. Hey, my friend.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
You know, it's a good day. It's a good day. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to come on again and speak with you.
Oh, my goodness. You know, this is like it's an honor always to bring you on. It's actually a joy to bring you on all the time. So thank you for coming on. Give us a little bit about you. Give us a little bit of a plug of your social media, and tell us about your book.
Yeah, as I said before, I'm a first-time author of the book High Strangeness, A Lifetime of Alien and Paranormal Encounters, which is a book, really is a memoir, really, about my childhood, growing up in London and experiencing different types of paranormal phenomena in the house where I grew up. I'm also an alien abductee from birth, a breakaway military abductee. I'm a veteran of the Secret Space Program and Futuristic Soldier Programs, which are, I guess, super soldier programs they call now. I speak a lot about, the mental health side of things, like, complex PTSD and DID, dissociative identity disorder, which is, again, created by a lot of the military programs, classified, unclassified programs I've been involved with and I'll continue to be involved with. And I also am more now a public speaker, whistleblower, in regards to a lot of the things that I've experienced as a child, teenager, and I guess an adult in regards to these particular, mind-controlled projects. So that's a little bit about me.
So in your book, High Strangeness, you do a lot of, you give us a lot on some stuff that happened to you, especially in those earlier years. I was reading over a part of it today again, and and it really hit me, just how in depth and encompassing your experience was. Can you tell us a little bit about um, how your experience affected your life then and how it affects it now?
Well, when I was having these experiences, especially a young child, there's a lot of things that I wrote about in the book and a lot of information that I now have now, which is, it fills in a lot of those spaces, question marks about a lot of things. But it was very traumatic for me when I was having these experiences because I didn't know what they were, because of also it was very isolating. I didn't have anyone to speak to about it like we have today. And I grew up in a strict Irish Roman Catholic environment where I was educated by nuns and priests. So it was difficult to go and share any of that information with anyone. So I was dealing with it a lot of the time on my own. But when I had these experiences as well, it was very frightening because these particular beings that were coming to visit me, what we now know, the Greys, because of the experiences I had, it wasn't positive experiences at all. And, I had a lot of demonic type attacks in this particular house, which, I speak about in my book. And I didn't really understand what that was. I have a little more understanding of why I had them now. Because of the military side of things that I've uncovered. So yeah, it was difficult because also when I moved from when I was like 17 and I moved from my childhood home and I moved to a different area at the time, I didn't realize that this phenomena follows you, and I started to have more and more of these abductions. They accelerated more and more, and they got actually much more sinister in their scope. And so, I had a lot of, I lost my dad when I was 15, coming into 16, and then I lost two of my aunts months later, and then my dog died. So then I had quite a lot of deaths occurring, and at the same time, I was dealing with these abductions. I didn't understand them. I was quite frightened when I was having them. I didn't know if I was ever going to be brought back whenever I was taken. And I couldn't stop them. As I've explained in some other podcasts before, when I was having them as well in this other location, I was basically, in your head, you're trying to think, how can you stop them? And your left brain kicks in and you're trying to reason out what's the best way to do this. I used to sleep with weapons with me in my bed. I used to have sharp blades in there. If I'd had a gun, I'd probably had that as well. But and you think, maybe if I barricade the door. So in my bedroom, I was barricading my windows with something so they couldn't get in.
Yeah.
Or I was putting something against the door. But that's your left brain. You're trying to reason it out. But your right brain is actually saying, you know what, that's not going to work. They're not actually using the same science as what you're thinking about. They're actually able to come through solid objects, because we now know they're not solid, are they? So as such, we're working with different types of energies. And so they were able to come through and they were able to still get me. So even though I had a blade with me as well to try to stop an abduction by the Greys or any other creature, you think that you'll be able to use it, but when they get hold of you, you can't use it. You're paralyzed, and they just take you. And at times, you think about running, and but they often find you. They're able to locate you, especially with implants. So I know that I've got implants, and I've also got military implants that have been put into my physical body, but also they're in my etheric, in my aura around my body as well. And then we also got, from what we discovered, we got past life implants that reactivate themselves the moment we're reborn back here. So the moment in a way, our heart starts to beat is what reactivates these implants from. And so I think if you've been abducted in the past and it's, a generational thing, I believe they switch back on and the Greys are able to track you again, because remember, they have longer lives than us. So it was very difficult. I mean, over time and having, I guess, PTSD, but not being aware of it and having nightmares. I have nightmares now. I have triggers, and you can have panic attacks. It all depends really when they come. But in the past, because of this and because of being very isolated, I've self-harmed. And at one time I did actually take my life. And I was in hospital for a week, and I was 50-50 because it was so difficult to deal with. I just didn't know where to go with it. So I did, I actually took, at one time, I took about 136 tablets. But I was quite close to death. But then, I come back and you carry on, I guess. So it was very difficult.
You mentioned, especially early on, having some dynamic manifestations from this. But was there ever a time when you felt an angelic presence at any point during any of this?
I think in my very early experiences, I had a lot more. There were positive ET type energies around me, and angelic type energies. I was at a very early age, I was able to see spirit. And as I said before, in the Eye of Jupiter show, I was able to manifest quite easily if I thought something, probably within less than 24 hours, that whatever I was thinking would appear in some way or another, not necessarily in what you're thinking of, but something quite close to it. And I think a lot of children that are empaths or sensitives, they can do this. But I think it's just, in a way, it's pulled out of us by, by society, communities, and maybe well-meaning people. But yeah, so I did have those experiences as well, but the military side of things, they created a barrier that stopped this type of these contacts.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, Tom just entered the room here with us. That can be, I think that's one of the things that people don't understand about the experience, especially abduction, is that it's kind of like a multi-dimensional thing. It's not just one thing or the other. It's not just grays. It's not just Nordics or whatever. It seems a lot of times that it is very much like a combination of different experiences, all kind of entwined together. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand, is that it is kind of a conglomeration of different experiences. Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, because the thing is, even when we look at ufology, and even the communities, even with researchers and that, I think the old phenomena around abduction is very taboo still. It's different from when people, they see lights in the sky, but when you come across somebody who's had those experiences, it's quite difficult to comprehend. But also, when you have someone in your circle that you then know and you're in front of and you're speaking to, there's also a lot of, with me, there was a lot of fear around, if we're with this person, we might get abducted, but it doesn't, as I tried to explain, it doesn't work that way. The Greys take you on the abduction program primarily. There are some cases where it's not that way, but primarily it's the Greys take you as children. And when you got an adult that's been taken, it's because they, as an adult, when they were a child, they were taken. And you often find it is generational. It runs in the blood. One
Right.
parent will have those experiences that will be passed on to one of their children. But I think it's more not necessarily a case it's passed on. I think it's more a case that it's continued from other lifetimes. When you're on these projects and programs, you might think when you leave the earth and you go to spirit and then you reincarnate back here, that's the end of it. It's not the end of it. It's a continuation, because these programs have been going on for centuries and they're continuing to this day. But the only thing is, we got more wise to it now because we have the technology as well, and we're able to communicate, we're able to share. And now we've got a much bigger picture of events that are taking place. And we've also, we've come to, over time, we've come to understand, like you just said, Daniel, it's not just one thing, it's many, many things all banded together, all the different types of phenomena that all of us in these fields, people in the chat room, either experience or they're, investigative researchers, something to do within these fields, it's all connected. Not one. I don't think there's one single phenomena that's separated from the others.
Right. That's one of the things that it seems like I kind of liken it to a band, a rubber band that's just, you start and it just keeps stretching and stretching and stretching and going on and on until, as far as the rubber band can go, which can last for a very long time. Now, you mentioned family lines and in particular, like a kind of a continuation.
Yeah, I mean, there are similarities in why the Greys choose particular children, and in some ways it's the same methodology in which the military choose the children for these projects and programs, But again, when I speak about the military, we're not speaking about the mainstream military that it's other, it's to do with secret societies. It's more, organizations that are private, that have a lot of money to do things, I guess, which are more bordering around the criminal, but they hide everything behind national security to safeguard themselves, I mean, the thing is, like with the US Congress, these have no power in these projects. They don't have no power, regardless of what power they think they have. When it comes to these military projects, they don't have no power whatsoever. There's nothing they can do, and there's no bases they can enter in, even with force. They'll be chucked, they'll be thrown away. And also what we know of as well, with a lot of the representatives in Congress, a lot of them take backhanders because they don't want to get involved, because they know the people that they're dealing with are way above, what they can do, and they can even cause them problems. I've had people like from MUFON telling me, in the US, that they won't come near people like me, or others like targeted individuals, because they're frightened that they'll be attacked or that they'll be targeted by the people that we deal with. And I think in some cases that's true. But then where do you go for support then if that's the case?
This is very true. Indeed. Tom has a question about
Hello, Tom.
The Cybertruck explosion was part of a military psyops or agency mind control action. So we were talking about this just before we came on.
That's right. Yeah.
The explosion in front of Trump Towers. and he's wondering if you think that's part of the military psyop or agency mind control action.
I don't know about one of them, but the one with the guy who was military, or was he military or ex-military, in the Tesla car, I do believe that was a psyop. I believe that's very much in line with what's going on now in the US. And I do believe that is part of one of the military projects. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of get the same feeling, to be honest with you. There's so many things. There's, again, layers upon layers upon layers.
I think with a lot of these type of attacks, if you look into them carefully and I think people like within our communities are getting wiser to what they're doing now. It's not so much, it's, there's a lot of agendas that are going on with these particular operations, and you just have to try to understand what it is that they want to do with it when they're creating them. But many of these type of attacks, even these shootings that happen in the US, they are based around MK Ultra. Especially with the younger generations, when you often have them doing shootings and suddenly the police burst through, or the FBI burst through their doors, and they've got so many automatic rifles that not many adults could even afford, let alone get their hands on, and yet they're sat there conveniently to be found. And and even the characteristics of these people, they're a lot different to when they go out and do these so-called shootings. I think you'll find that these are all Black Hawk type programs.
Right. That, there was a lot of questions, especially I remember just the fiasco that and ridiculous debates that went on after Sandy Hook, which was one of the more horrific. Well, they were all horrific, but Sandy Hook seemed to be almost a turning point. It triggered a lot of things in people, and there was a lot of people using comment or doing a lot of commenting, saying that it was faked, that it was rigged, that there was a lot of craziness going on there.
I mean, the thing with this is it's psychological warfare against society. It's basically creating fear in the masses. But one of the things that they understand is how the human mind works, how the public, society, communities work, how their minds work. But so when you have an attack like this, it's very difficult then for anyone to actually bring up the subject, to say that it's actually different from the narrative that's been presented or that people perceive. Because when you're doing that, it's because it's such a sensitive subject, it's difficult then for somebody to bring it up when they, possibly with all the emotions that are running high, people would get attacked. And the people that set up these psychops, they know this. So in a way, it's another way of covering your tracks.
Right, it definitely is. It's kind of up my favorite topic of all, the moon landing. It's kind of up there with that. It's like, did we really go to the moon or did we not? Was it a studio or was it actually that big hunk of cheese in the sky? For years we've been debating that, and I think a lot of times, and I frequently tell people, my personal opinion is, do the research, trust your instincts, and in the end, the final results will come clean one day. We will know the answer at some point in our path. But here's the thing that I really want to I want to get into this a little deeper about the family and the bloodlines, because I think that's one of those things that is a very big topic with people sometimes. There's a lot of comments and speculation about the Rh negative factor with abductees. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, a lot of people do bring it up and they ask about, you know, what your blood type is. And I think there is a lot of, you know, there is some truth to that in regards to, there seems to be a lot of people that experience paranormal, you know, paranormal experiences that do have these type of, you know, genetic bloodlines. But I wouldn't always say that it's always that case. I think there's other, you know, there's other things going on in the background with these people. It's not just, you know, one pin in the basket, so to speak, or one egg in the basket. I think there's many eggs in that basket that contribute to why they select particular people, and whilst in other cases they do not.
Right, right. I feel like I don't want to really say the word marked, that people are marked, but I feel like, you know, it's a continuation. Like you mentioned, lifetime of implants and so forth, and I feel like that's very true in a big sense. That it's just a continuation, a reverbing back through time and forward into time, if you will. And I think that's where a lot of people, you know, focus on the here and now, but they forget that, you know, if you look at the past, I mean, there's literally paintings of the Madonna with UFOs in the background of them. I mean, you know, and there's debate as to whether the Star of Bethlehem was actually a spaceship or not, and that sort of thing. So when we get into these kinds of discussions and we get into these kinds of theories, you know, we have to accept the fact that, like, today is not the only day there was. You know what I'm saying? That it was happening yesterday too, and we need to accept and acknowledge that and make it part of our reality if we're going to understand any of this at all. I think, honestly, the bloodlines, I think, is very important. I think the family uh, bloodlines has quite a bit to do with it myself, but I also believe the individual, you know, I believe we're created and almost predestined in a sense to what we are called into doing lifetime after lifetime. And I feel like that may be a lot behind it too. Do you not?
Yeah, I mean, you know, people do say, you know, there has been, or, you know, I do know of some in the SSP that they get attacked in regards to other people outside of these type of experiences, you know, because they think that when people are presenting, they're saying that they're special, and, you know, but that's not what they're saying. You know, in actual fact, none of them want to be that type of special. They don't want to be on these projects or programs. That, you know, they want to be abducted. You know, who the hell would? You know,
Right.
you know, you would have to be insane. You know, what's the point of that? You know, you're not getting nothing out of that. The only thing you're getting from it is pain and trauma. You know, but from, you know, what you see with a lot of the people in the SSB, many of them do start off as abductees. You know, I've heard targeted individuals saying it's all technology, it's all military, but in actual fact, it's not. You know, the earlier programs started off with the ETs, and if you go back into the past, it wasn't the military; it was the ETs doing these abductions then. It's just that the, you know, the military caught up with the, you know, with the Third Reich, with the Germans, and with their technology, with their scientific backgrounds, and you know, their occult knowledge, and you know, they used this, they, you know, enhanced it and developed it as best they could. But they've also had, you know, programs with the ETs with more than nefarious ones, because the positive ones ain't going to give them hell. You know, they're not going to give them anything because they know that they're not going to use it in the correct way. You know, they're going to go against natural law and, you know, universal laws. So they're not going to give them anything. yeah, so it's a bit like that, isn't it, really? But
Yeah, I
most
agree with you.
but most certainly, the bloodlines seem to be important in very much the same respects as the so-called elite follow this type of thinking in regards to their bloodlines, that their bloodlines are better. But in actual fact, what you'll find is that many of the people on those projects and programs, and people generally in the communities, even if they don't believe anything, they have a stronger bloodline than what they do. In actual fact, many of those in the so-called occult elite backgrounds are fake. They don't have that. They don't have those type of bloodlines. It's just all nonsense that they try to convince other people, even researchers are fooled by it a lot of the time, that they think they got these special bloodlines. They haven't. They faked them. If you go back into history, you find that they've changed that history to suit themselves.
Right, right. And there's a lot of people that will talk about the concept of the Nephilim, which is a term that gets thrown away all over the place quite a bit. And I sound a little skeptical sometimes, probably because honestly, I'm doing the research on that now, and the concept that the descendants of the Nephilim are here to taint bloodlines and that sort of thing. Um, I I find the theology interesting. I find it to be something that is worth investigating and researching, uh, and possibly plausible. But am I going to sit here and totally amen it? Um, I'm I'm really out on that right now. I don't know. I really don't have a good strong opinion one way or the other on, yes, there's a descendancy of beings who are here to destroy the human race by tampering with the bloodlines or not. Uh, so I want to kind of tap into this and camp here for a little bit. What are some things that you want to bring to the table today that we really have not talked about? And because we've talked a lot about your experience in the past, and we've talked a lot about uh, just some of the traumas and so forth. But what are some of the things we have not brought up recently that you kind of want to put on the table for us tonight?
I was just going to go through a few of my experiences that I had that I didn't mention really in my book. Just a few things, just like UFO type things and other type of phenomena, I guess. I mean, what I want to do is go back just briefly to what you were talking about when we were talking about the psyop programs to do with the military. So I mean, I think regards to that, it is again, we got some of this going on, but I think also we got some people that do have, they do have their own little agendas as well, and what they want to do when they've got a problem with certain people, they might be willing to go out and do things as well. So I think it's with looking at it in much more detail. You need to, we need to. It's easy to just say it's one or the other, but without doing a lot of more research, into it, it could be either one of those things really. So it's a balance, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
because that would be then more sensible to put on the table really, than rather than just say it's one or the other. We know that the black psyops goes on, but I wouldn't say it's that all the time.
right, definitely. And I think it's really comfortable for us to fall into that one place of the if you will, the chicken soup for the soul, where we get very comfortable with the idea that it's this way, and this is where our truth lies, and we camp there, and we make a nice little bed in it, and that's where we stay and don't move. We don't want to challenge what the real truth is from what we perceive or what we've learned to feel at home in.
I mean, one of the, some of this, strange things that have happened with me is, I remember one time when I was having these experiences, I approached Bufora, the equivalent of MUFON, for the UK, and I was asking if somebody could speak to me about the experiences I was having, and at the time that they said they wouldn't, in a way, they wouldn't allow me to speak to the person I wanted to speak to, who at the time was, the head of that particular organization, but they offered me some other person. This other person, his name was Lucian Morgan. He's a professional hypnotherapist. You can look him up. He's around, I think, still. I think he's done shows and stuff like this. I think he has. But he arranged for me to meet up with him at his place. And I remember when I got there, he was talking to me, he offered me, a drink. And I remember he got me to do an ESP test. And it was like about 50 brown envelopes that was sealed. And he said to me that they had pictures in them, and he laid them out on the floor. And then he wanted me to either run my hand over them or to think, he gave me a bit of time, and I had to go through each one and then tell him. And at the end of the test, he told me that I cheated because I got all of them right. And I was quite surprised, but he told me each picture that I said that was in the envelopes, which I couldn't see, they were on the carpet. I was sat up on a sofa or a couch, and I think he was on a chair. And he said, yeah, how did you do that? And I thought, well, I don't know myself. So, but I remember then he got on his phone and he kept on calling somebody. And then this woman turned up. But then after that, I don't remember anything. And I actually think, I think he was able to access I think he was able to access some of the codes in my head. And I think he might have been a programmer.
Huh. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
I mean, as I said, that when this woman turned up as well, he seemed to be quite on edge, but then after that, I didn't have no more memories about. I don't remember coming out of that place, so that was quite unusual. And what I was going to say is a lot of the abductions as well that I had in the beginning they weren't actually physical ones. I did have a lot of them were actually outside of the body, so as a projector, I was able, that's one of the things I was able to do as well. As a young child, I was able to travel quite easily out of my body. So I was able to project my consciousness from the physical body and move around either in the immediate location or astrally through portals. And I remember one of the first type of ones that I remember is actually I come out of my body. It was in the daytime, I guess in the afternoon. And for whatever reason, I managed to find myself travel to actually San Francisco. And I was actually literally over the top of the Golden Gate Bridge. God knows why though, at the time I didn't know, but what I did was, this was in real time, so I could see the traffic below me. And then I remember flying into the water, these things you can do outside the body. I remember flying down into the water, and I remember that there was a United States Navy base there, a US Navy base underneath the water. And I remember that much later on, again, I went back to this location. So I'm not sure at this moment in time, off the top of my head, if that is You know, if it's anything to do with the SSP or not, I've not really found any information on that yet. So there, you know, there's some of the things. I've got other ones here as well.
It's interesting you said that about going underwater and seeing the bays. I remember standing on the shore there, and I think it was in Seaside, Oregon, actually. I know it was somewhere near the haystack there in Oregon, and looking out, and I was looking at a particular point, and I heard in my head, wow, he sees us. And thinking to myself, that is exactly why I'm here right now. And just having a sense that there was something there, man-made, that should not be there at the time, and them being very curious and almost afraid that they were being seen. And it's just, so it's very interesting that you bring that up, because I remember that very specifically, because the place, the time, and the just general location of the experience, and just hearing a very definite, wow, he sees us. Kind of like, oops, what do we do now? So it's interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, you often find as well that when you're traveling, when you're leaving your body at night, I've had many experiences where you're leaving the body at night,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in the bedroom, but when you're leaving your body, there's somebody waiting for you, literally, to take
Yeah.
you, and it's never, it's either the Greys have done that with me, but I've also had the military do that with me, and some of these are scientists,
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time coming out of my body, and then I was actually being held in my astral body by two men who I identified they were actually military, and one of them, there was a female with them who come along a little bit later, and she was actually from the US. She was a scientist, and I remember them holding me down, and one of them was using my name, and he was like saying to me, hold still, this is for your own good, because of what you've been doing. You've been interfering, you've been not doing what we want you to do. And then I heard the woman say, can he see us? Can he see us? Like that. And I remember one of the men looking up at her and saying, yes, he can see us. And I remember them having something like it was almost like a silver type drill or something, and I remember them putting it into my head and doing something there, and they would basically say, this is what you get for stepping out of line. So I remember they were waiting for me on this particular occasion, and so I'm not sure what I did, what I did to them, but they were, but these were from these were SSP, so these were part of these projects.
Can bases or facilities be created from astral materials to trap astral travelers and remote viewers? That's a good question.
I think you can, yeah, you can, if you mean, can you obtain things and create things on those levels? Yeah, you can. Because remember, the physical world is the shadow of these other worlds, of these other dimensions. This is, this is the shell, basically, of those other dimensions. And I think, with a lot of these projects, they've learned a lot now how to create, utilize these type of, these type of energies to do what they want. We know that they did it at Montauk. They were able to generate these type of energies to create things, or with the time traveling projects, to bring things back with them.
You mentioned like the lady being almost surprised again, which seems to be an ongoing theme. It's kind of like, well, duh. one of the things that you've talked about in previous uh, interviews was that you mentioned that you were able to kind of break away at one point and sort of take control of your own destiny, and that was part of the thing that kind of made them cringe a little bit. Do you feel like this experience you were just talking about was kind of a precursor of that?
I mean, it could be. I mean, the what you were talking about happened to me in 1973. The project actually ended in 1985. But I mean, what I find interesting in that is it seems to be that between the ages of 5 and 10, when I was involved in this first experiment, it was the first of its kind in the UK. That it seemed to have something. I think it was connected in some way because it seemed to come to a stop in between the age of 15 and 16 when my dad died, and there was a lot of things going on with me at that time, in that time period. So the project at the moment is involved in a bidding war for the project to be restarted again, and I'm part of that bidding war at the moment. So at the moment I'm getting a lot of problems with the people that I was involved with when I was 5 and 10 years old. So it's like we said before, the projects go to ground and they just change the names and then they restart them again when they can. And this one that I was involved in that closed in 1985, it was actually shelved, it was put on the shelf. But there's a lot of organizations now in a bid for this particular project and for the abilities that I had whilst I was in that project to do things. Basically, as we said before, it was about going to places without being seen. Technology, ET technology, military technology wouldn't be able to pick up what I was doing. So it is quite effective in that way. But the things that I didn't talk about is this particular creature's abilities to do things. So and again, this project wasn't based around, it depends, on what they want you to do, really.
Right.
That's true.
I'm really concerned about, or not really concerned, I shouldn't say that. I'm very curious about 1985 and why that was such a pivotal point in our history. Because I feel like there was something about that particular year that kind of changed the course of where we're at now. And I have yet to put my finger on exactly what it was, but that seems like a very pivotal year in the history of humanity.
It does.
And you know exactly what I'm talking, because the look on your face when you was pure acknowledgement. So you get it too, right? It's that it was something, it was a wow moment for humanity.
Yeah, I guess, I'm not sure what it is myself, but obviously there was something around that period of time when something did change.
Right. And I kind of feel like it was one of those moments where not only was it a pivotal moment, but it was also a moment where we kind of missed the boat on a couple of things that could have benefited the human race greatly. And so it was kind of a moment of glory and triumph and dismal failure at the same time. And that's where my curiosity kind of goes a little wild, and I want to know exactly what happened, what we did, and what we messed up along the way that made 1985 so pivotal that made it that kind of like that moment. I don't remember where we were in the Reagan years at that point, but I know that he was instrumental in a lot of things that kind of brought us to the place where we are now, essentially, with technology, with the political arena. CERN. What about CERN? What was CERN doing in 1985? That's a very good question. That's a very good question. It's very interesting about the connection between CERN and Michael mentioned the Third Reich and so forth, and Switzerland. The fact that there were so many artifacts from the Third Reich that is hidden in certain places, strategically located in the same areas with CERN. I find that very interesting. So, Michael, what are some other things that you would like to bring to our attention tonight that we really haven't? Because I know when it came to your experiences, especially some of the stuff that you kind of discovered along the way, there were some aha moments that you had that could really lend a lot more, I guess, enlighten us a little bit more to some of the situations that were happening and are happening now. If that makes sense.
Is there anything specific that you're looking at?
Not specific, but I am curious to see what some of the things are that you want to bring to our attention that maybe help us understand, especially from 1985, that pivotal point forward. Some things that may help us to understand a little bit better our current situation, the situation in general, if that makes sense.
I mean, I was going to share with you, is that okay, for some of the other things I've had? So, I mean, I had what I call in my book, The Grey Night of Trauma, which is an experience that I had just a little while, actually, around that period of time with where I grew up in London. I grew up in a schoolhouse in the grounds of a Roman Catholic school where, as I say in my book, a lot of my experiences took place. And I remember on this particular night going out into the school grounds, and you know, even back in them times, I used to do, you know, things like meditation to try and tune in with the energies around me. But I remember on this particular night, I felt, you know, quite apprehensive. I felt like I was being watched from somewhere in the dark or above me. You know, and I remember being out quite late in the early hours of the morning. And then when I was, you know, getting sleepy, I guess it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, like the witching hour. And I was going back from the school playground back to where my home is, you know, the house. And that was, you know, everyone had gone to bed. So I'd gone in, and that's, you know, where I was literally going to go. I was really tired. And so I remember going up the stairs to my bedroom. And then just before I got to my bedroom door, I remember having this feeling in my head that I shouldn't go into the bedroom. I should go turn around and go back down the stairs and go into what would be, you know, like the living room. and sleep downstairs. And so I sort of ignored this feeling, and then I just again was going into my room. Again, I had this strong impression that I should walk back down, and that's what I did in the end. So I went back down the stairs and I went into the living room, and the room was still dark, but it was in the summertime, so it was quite warm. And I remember laying down on the couch, and then when I closed my eyes, though, I had this feeling. I had a feeling that there was something wrong. With when you have these experiences with the greys, especially, you have a feeling of apprehension, a feeling of dread. You often hear other abductees speak in the same way. It's just a feeling that you might not necessarily be able to articulate that it's actually one of these particular beings coming to get you. But most certainly you do have those feelings. And I remember closing my eyes, then opening them up quickly. And I felt my body was it was paralyzed. I wasn't able to move, but I was able to move my eyes. As we said before, the greys don't seem to be able to control that part of your body. You can see. I think this is one of the reasons when abductees say that they can see. They can't move when they're on ships, but they can see shadows of these particular beings around them, from the corners of their eyes, but they keep out of sight sometimes. And I remember wanting to get up, but find myself, I couldn't move, and I was trying to shout out there, and I was panicked. I was trying to shout out for somebody in the house, upstairs to hear me, but I wasn't able to vocalize it. I wasn't able to use my voice. So I was actually shouting in my head, my thoughts. And then I remember then my head, something put their hand on my head. And when I could feel their hand on my head, I could feel it wasn't human. It felt like it had claws, and I've had experiences where I've come where I've been able to touch the hands and the claws of these particular beings. And I remember my head was jerked back a little bit, and then when it was, I could see it was one of these grey figures with the big black eyes just staring down at me. And at the time I was very quite terrified, really. I couldn't move. I got this strange creature standing behind me. God knows what it was going to do. And then I remember a second one, and I felt also that they were both males, a male type energy. I wasn't able to determine that with looking, but I was able to feel it, an energy from these beings, that they were, a male type energy. And I remember the second one I was able to see sort of a little bit in front of me, moving towards me. And then this one had a wand-like type instrument in its hand. And then it's floating towards me. And I remember, what I do remember of that is I was literally trying to, if I could, I was trying to kick it, move it away from me, but I couldn't move. I couldn't shout out. And although I was struggling to break free from this paralysis, I couldn't do so. And it just felt at that time, I just felt exhausted in my body. There's nothing I could do. Literally, whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And then I remember that my mouth was opened, and this sort of wand-like device was placed into my mouth. And I remember it sounded like there was a buzzing sound coming from it. And I remember if my mouth started to burn inside, almost like a drill, like a laser. And I could feel my mouth inside burning, and literally I could feel it burning. And I was like shouting out and screaming in my head, to stop. And, they just carried on doing what they wanted to do, whether they were ignoring you or they just had orders, and, they were just following through with something automatically that they were told to do. I wasn't sure which one it was. But I do remember when it eventually did stop and the greys moved away from me. They sort of went to the side. It was only then that I realized then that standing just ahead of me, what I could see with my eyes was what I describe now as a United States military Air Force officer. I could see him in his uniform, just standing there, literally staring, watching, and God knows how long he'd been there for. And I think at that time, that was the sort of first time I, as you know, as a teenager, and I'd come into contact and seen sort of like a military person standing during an abduction. And then he walked towards them, and then at some point they vanished. And then when I was able to get control of my body again, the paralysis vanished. I then got off the sofa or the couch, and I sort of stumbled a little bit because I was so weak. You know, my energy was weak. And then as I got out of the room, you know, I wanted to get away from the room as quickly as I could. We had like a downstairs, you know, toilet. And then went in there, and I basically, you know, I switched the light on. And the first thing I did was to see what damage they'd done to my mouth. But when I looked in my mouth, there was no damage. You know, so were they working on my physical? Were they working on my astral? I don't know. Did they put something in my mouth? Did they take something out that I couldn't see? I just don't know. But then, you know, I went back. Eventually, I went back upstairs, and when I got into my room, I just fell to the ground on the floor, and I just, you know, through exhaustion, and just stayed there. And when I woke up, I had the full memory of what happened to me, and you know, it stayed with me to this day.
Wow.
So,
So,
you know, you know, I don't know to what degree the military officer was involved with it.
so this is taken from chapter 9, the Gray Night of Trauma, which starts on page 46 in your book.
Yeah.
This is where I turned to before the show tonight, was this exact chapter, and I had bookmarked it for some reason. I wasn't sure exactly why. Now I get it. They work very interestingly sometimes with giving me heads up about stories. That particular instance, you mentioned you weren't sure if they were working on the physical or the astral. Can you go into that a little bit and explain to our viewers a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of people would not really grasp the importance of what you said there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if, you know, when this was happening, you know, I was in so much trauma or terror when it was happening. I wouldn't have been able to, I don't think I would have been able to determine whether or not something was physically put into you know, because of the pain that I was feeling from what I could feel they were doing in my mouth. You know, a lot of the time I was just experiencing this pain whilst having this strange looking creature in front of me with this wand-like device, with this other one behind me, holding my head in place. You know, so I couldn't move my head as much. And I always used to think, you know, because there was no damage there, I was thinking, was it in the physical or was it in my, you know, my etheric field, in my energy body, you know, what immediately surrounds the physical, the aura, or, you know, I wasn't sure if they were working on that then, if there was no damage to the physical. So could it possibly be, you know, I don't know. I'm just, you know, speculating at this moment in time as well, because I really don't know. It's either one or the other, but they most certainly were doing something at that time to me, because I could feel the pain. You know, it's almost like having a drill in your mouth when you're going to the dentist, but without having, you know, nothing to stop that pain. But this didn't feel like it was actually drilling. It felt like it was literally burning my gums, and I could feel it around here. You know, doing this. So obviously, to my shock, you know, I was thinking, oh my God, you know what they've done to my mouth, and it is, you know, it's all burnt inside, you know. And when I got and looked into the mirror, there was just nothing there. But but this was something that happened. And it's something that I remember to this day. When I was writing about it in my book, again, you brought up a lot of trauma because you're reliving it when you're writing it down. Although it's got a healing property to that, you're still, being triggered by those experiences. And these are just some of the ones that I remember. God knows the ones that I don't remember.
Right.
But then
Right.
this is where you got with the people in the SSP with the fragmentations of these experiences. So it's, I mean, that's just one. I mean, I allude quite a lot in my book to the possibility of military involvement because of the experiences. When you look at ET and the way that the methodology of ET is, as opposed to the methodology of human military, there is a difference. They work. There is some similarities, but there is still an underlying presence feeling that this is the work of the military in some ways. I guess maybe covertly trying to pretend that it's the Greys all the time doing these abductions, when in actual fact you have a military and a MyLab experience occurring. So I think that again there's a lot of screen memories involved where they're replacing a memory over a memory, but you're just remembering the narrative that they've actually placed in your head, and this is where you have the fragmentation and the trauma. So when you're able to break that down, perhaps through, to some cases, I think regression, and you're able to break through that type of barrier to uncover, more of what actually took place. And I think the military do, I wouldn't say do it all the time. Again, it's a 50-50. It's balancing between the two. But I think they do it more often than not. I don't think they've done it in the early days, but I think they were able to do it much later on with their, understanding of how things work, and obviously with their advancement in technology. Some of it being given by the Greys or other races to them, or in other cases stolen by us. Because they, the military, they don't care. If they want something, they'll take it, whether you give it to them or not. They're going to have it.
Do you find, because it seems to me, and like not only reading your book but doing other research as well, that a lot of times the abductees that are coming forward are somehow connected with the military. They're children of military people, or they're the wife of a military person. They're somehow connected, usually with people who are in the military. Do you find that to be true?
I think there is some evidence for that. Again, I wouldn't say it's in every case. Again, it's looking into it and researching it. But I think there are a lot more cases where you can find abductees have some sort of connection with the military, either a personal connection or somebody, like you said, somebody in their family, or even tracing it back a little bit into the past, into their past life or their family tree. There seems to be some sort of connection between the two. And you do have also people that are in the standard type military that they seem to come forward now saying that they have memories as well that are very similar to, not necessarily the projects that involve the children, but I guess because of their maybe their skill sets, maybe they're empathic, maybe they're a little bit different to the soldiers, that's the the men and women that they share their units with, and maybe they're pinpointed for some reason, again not necessarily because of their blood. Maybe there is something else that they have that's of interest to people that run these projects, so that they then through through their tests and their experiences and being observed, they're probably taken and selected for these particular projects. Maybe they're going off somewhere to maybe Iraq. They're going there to fight, but maybe they don't actually go there. Maybe they go somewhere else off world to fight, and they come back. They have almost like a screen memory in place, with a script or a different narrative, and they think they've gone there when in actual fact they've gone somewhere else. But when those memories, and they do eventually come to the surface when they're ready, or if something triggers that memory, they may have a different script in their head and think, oh my God, what's this about? You know, so on top of their PTSD, they're going to have a double dose of it. You know, they probably think that they're going mad. So it's, you know, really these projects are screwing around with people's lives. And, you know, everything that's sacred and, you know, in who we are, in our makeup, you know, they're messing around with that. They're just using us for their own, you know, nefarious purposes, you know. And it's not about greed. This has nothing to do with money or greed. It's much deeper than that.
So there's a question about whether or not going to the dentist causes you anxiety after some of your experiences.
I've always been nervous about the dentist. When, you know, literally when I was a child, I had to be dragged into the room to, you know, to go into the chair, the reclining chairs. You know, I never wanted to go into them. I mean, even today, I'm not so nervous today about it, but I do sometimes when the lights come down in front of me and you do go back. Not so much about the needles these days, but I do feel I've had panic attacks. Like last year when I was at the dentist, I did have a panic attack then when that happened. But my dentists know that I have PTSD, but they don't know the reason why. And I'm not going to tell them. So
right.
You know.
Yeah, I know my dentist was more than puzzled when, because in order for him to do any work on me at all, he would have to give me gas first. And there was one day when he had me fairly subdued and he was working on me and I started crying. And he was like, "Why are you crying?" And I couldn't tell him, you know, that I was having a vivid download of another experience very similar, where I was being worked on, and it was not a dentist, and it was not in a nice, clean, comfy office,
Sure.
you know, and like I wanted to say something so bad, but I remember like the look of utter confusion on his face. He's like, "This is laughing gas, not crying gas. Why are you crying?" I'm like, good question. But yeah, there's definitely, I think, and there's definitely a lot of anxiety that comes from these, you know, the trauma, from the post experience. And I think a lot of people don't really fully comprehend just how deep that goes a lot of times. You know, when abductees come forward and they talk about their experiences, you know, I remember having somebody tell me once that they could not remember anything about giving birth to one of their children other than waking up in the bathroom afterwards and not understanding how they got there and not understanding what this thing was next to them, and this thing was their child, you know, and you know, at least seemingly their child. And you know, I think a lot of times people who are hearing these experiences don't understand how deep that rabbit hole goes in the trauma area, you know, and that it does affect, like, even the sound of dropping a spoon on the floor is a classic example of something that is an innocent trigger that you would not think would be a trigger, but it can be. You know, the sound of the spoon vibrating as it hits the floor. The just experience of hearing metal hitting something, you know, can definitely be a very triggering thing to people who've experienced these sorts of traumas. And I think a lot of people are very unaware of, just what these triggers can be sometimes, and how seemingly innocent and, daily occurrences can be very much, an open door a lot of times. So
I think that a lot, when we look at the SSP community, I think, in the, with a lot of people in the SSP community, they do speak about, more of the, their mission objectives and what they did. They talk about the technology, and they talk about, some of the memories that they have or I've uncovered in regards to that, and that's all very, that's all very good and everything, because you're learning things about that. But I think a lot more, if they can, talk about, the other side of it, on a much controversial even level, go down that rabbit hole a little bit further. And, but it's difficult because of the emotions and the trauma experience. So you have to do it carefully as well. But but when we're talking to other people outside of those type of experiences, there are things that they should understand as well, because it's not all, it's not all gun ho and going into these missions. That's part of it, but it's the process to how you get from A to B to C to D. It should be much more important, and also the facts how they use children in these projects, and because that's a big thing, with all these children that go missing. Again, not all children go into the projects, but a lot of them do, and even if there's one or two going into them, that's something that should be addressed, because no child should have to undergo those type of experiences to be used by fucking adults, excuse my language, to go into these projects to be abused, and then have it covered up with, with a banner of national security. What type of governments have we got running these countries?
Right. Yeah, one of the things that that's kind of central to my research right now is specific points on the map where disappearances seem to be pretty common, or there have been a number of disappearances that have sparked a lot of public interest over time. Some of these are 50 years old or more, the cases, and they're still out there and they're still being talked about. The Great Smoky Mountain National Park is one of the areas that I concentrate on a lot when it comes to disappearances. Dennis Martin, who was only 6 years old when he disappeared, never found, not a trace found of him. There's been no evidence of what happened to him. Trini Gibson, another case from 1976, 16-year-old who went missing in a crowd of 40 students that were coming back down from Andrews Ball to the Klingman Dome parking area, literally just vanished with no trace. I mean, days and days, hundreds of men out searching, and they've never been able to locate any evidence that Trini is still on that mountain somewhere. And the list just goes on and on. I mean, when it comes to areas like the Smokies, Appalachian areas, the Appalachian Trail was notorious for having strange occurrences and disappearances and so forth. So, and I'm sure there's places like that all over where you have key areas where there's a high number of disappearances, especially of children, seemingly never are located or found ever again. So,
I mean, my brother, when we were growing up, my brother, who's 2 years, Sean, who's 2 years older than me. I mean, when he was younger as well, he went missing on a busy beach, He was with my parents and uncle and aunt, and it was in the daytime, and he suddenly wandered off. But wherever he was with adults all the time. They couldn't find him, and the police searched for him literally for hours and hours and hours. They went to the same places in the areas, like they say, with a lot of these forests when they're looking for people. In the places that they searched and looked for, he was then come from one of these places where they searched already.
Wow.
And he obviously he didn't have no memory where he'd been. So, because he was missing for hours, people on the beach, parents were frantic, and they were looking for him, and they didn't know where he went.
True. And you mentioned in the book quite a bit about Sean being with you at various times when you had your experiences. And so, do you feel like Sean may have had his own then experiences that you may not be fully aware of?
It's very possible. I did mention that, I think, in the book, that there is a possibility. My relationship with Sean is not good. It's quite a bad relationship I have with him. But I think it could possibly be because of the experiences that we shared together. I have asked him when I've had an opportunity, a rare opportunity in the past, over a couple of years ago, to speak to him, and I asked him about some of the experiences that we had together, and he did remember them. At one time he did say to me, that he felt like, did he dream it? Was it an illusion? But because we both experienced it at the same time, we realized, that wasn't the case. And also, as I said, our parents, when we were younger, what we didn't know until we were much older, they used to speak about these experiences that had occurred, because it was happening so often that you couldn't ignore it or just pass it off as being a child's imagination. My dad had things as well, and my mum, as I said in my book, I believe she was an abductee, because some of the experiences she had, but I don't think she understood what they were.
One of the things I want us to talk about before it gets too terribly late is the thing that you brought up in earlier about St. Michael's Tower.
Oh, right, yeah. This was an experience where I live now in the southwest of England, which is, the countryside. This is in Glastonbury. It's in a very magical and spiritual place with a rich type of history. And you've got two type of forces there. You've got the light forces and the dark forces. And sometimes they work okay together, and other times they seem to be pitting against each other. But I used to live in this area, in 2013. I used to live here and work there. And I remember going, this particular place is on what we call Glastonbury Tor, which is, a really big hill type structure. And there is there's a what we call St. Michael's Mount, or St. Michael's Church or Tower. And as I said, it stood in the 12th century. But then there was an earthquake, I think I put in 1285. And it actually, it destroyed most of it, and then it was rebuilt again. But in that photo that I showed you, Daniel, of the tower with the black arrow going around it, just in front of it, there's a circular type platform on that photo.
Right, yeah.
But on this particular night, I carried out a ritual which is called a gate walking ritual, which is to open up an ancient portal in the area using the dragon lines, which, like ley lines. And I carried out this portal with a friend of mine in the British SSP, and he's a veteran of the Super Soldier program as well. and we've been described as twins with very, very telepathic abilities together. And I've been involved in quite a lot of stuff with him here and outside the body as well. We're using mission objectives as well. But we carried out one of these rituals at this site, and at the same time, after conducting this particular ritual, he was outside of this tower. I went inside of it. As it says on there, it's got no roof, so you can look up through the tower. It's like 3 stories high, quite tall, and you can look up at the stars. And I went in there, and the moment I went in after doing that ritual, we had 2 blue orb-like saucer type craft flying right around it, where I got where I marked it out on that picture, flying over the top of it, shining down the blue light into the tower where I was. So my friend, he took some pictures out. I'm sure he did on his phone. But that come because of the ritual that we carried out on this particular spot. So it's also a place where it's had over the years quite a few sightings of these particular craft. Especially you've got the TR3B triangular craft have been seen over this area. And when I lived in the area in 2013, when I was living there, I had quite a lot of sightings of these particular craft as well. And I do remember one time going up on another part of Glastonbury, and a friend who I had at the time, he had a military type sniper scope that a friend of his had sort of passed on to him from one of the bases, shall we say. And he went up, and we went up there, and I was looking, he had a convertible type car. And I went up and I looked up at the sky. But when I looked up at the sky, through this device, I could see 2 of these black triangular craft in a firefight together. Wow. Way up above the earth. And you could see right through it. And when I took it away from me, I couldn't see nothing, So, I couldn't see anything. But when I put it back into my eye again, I could see these 2 craft, which was really unusual, flying around, and they were literally firing at each other. So, but I don't know what that was about. But it's just interesting that he, that he had this device that I could see. So imagine, I mean, that was a long time ago. So imagine what you got now.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting that it was almost like they were combating each other. You mentioned that this particular area is kind of an area where a lot of light and dark kind of converge.
It's the people there that are there. I mean, it's an area basically where you can have a lot of religions. Most people are opposed to each other. You got the spiritual, you got the Catholic, the Protestant. You got and you got so many, but they seem to get on together. They have a mutual respect for each other's religions and their differences. But you do have certain areas that there is much more a pull towards black magic, with the proper magic, with the CK, rather than what we call the childish magic. And it seems to be at times there's a build-up of these type of energies, where in a way where they're battling, I guess, through witchcraft and wizardry, and there's a big energy between these 2 forces. So I lived there for a little while and I worked there, but you experience that in that particular area. But as I said, many people from all over the world actually go to this particular location, and many of them, especially Americans, they love the place. And then a lot of Americans leave America and they live in the UK in this particular location. So, there's many Americans that live there. They just like the feeling of it,
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. I can imagine that would be a place that would draw people in very quickly because of the energy of that area. So you said you lived there for a while. What was that like living in that area?
I went there originally when I was with somebody. I was in a relationship at the time with a Spanish lady, and she worked in the city of London as a PA for Lehman Brothers. You know, the banks that went down. In them times, she was like a personal assistant to the Lehman Brothers. You know, and she went there because she had a very spiritual nature. And she was involved, you know, with the military. Her sister was in the Spanish Special Forces, and she had some type of military background that could border up, if we were looking at it in certain ways, which could have been with some of these projects. And she wanted to live there anyway. She left her job, gave that up, and she went to live in Glastonbury, and I moved with her to the area. You know, she visited a few times, and I did, but then eventually we lived there, and we both lived there and we both worked there at the time. You know, but then we, you know, later on we broke up. You know, as you do, it doesn't always work out. Yeah, you know, I was again whilst in this area, I was having a lot of this. I was having a lot of abductions, but at the same time, I was having a lot of this military side things going on. But at the time, I was more focused at that time on the Greys abductions of me, and not so much on the military side of it. But there's also, you know, there's a lot of paranoia in the area of Glastonbury as well, because, you know, people often believe that when you're, because it's more of a, you know, it's much more of a spiritual place, but it's also, you got a lot of love and light communities there, you know, who believe, you know, that they're protected from everything, you know, and they don't believe that the military are involved in anything, or they just don't want to know. And you know, with that, there's a lot of paranoia that you're actually then, you know, on one hand they don't believe it, but on the other hand they think you're an agent of the, you know, of the government. So you got, you know, you got different levels of, you know, of thinking there, you know. And when people come to the understanding that I was, you know, I was in some cases discussing about the Greys, and I was trying to, you know, but I was talking from a point of trying to understand my own experiences and what was happening to me. You know, then they were accusing me of being, you know, something to do with like MI5 or MI6, you know, and that you're, you know, that you're like an agent for them and you're spying on them, you know. So there's this type of thing. I was even accused once of being a CIA agent whilst working in a restaurant, you know.
Wow.
Well, come on, you know, I'm working in a restaurant, for heaven's sake.
So have you ever returned to Glastonbury?
Yeah, Glastonbury's only up the road from where I am now, so I've been there. You know, and so has Sandra. She's been there in the, you know, in the chat room. So yeah, we've been there. And again, you know, it's I mean, I could live there again. You know, it's quite a nice. It is, you know, you can get used to it. It's a nice place to live, and people do tend to get on. But you know, but you do have this other side to it as well. But you get that anywhere, don't you? Really?
Right.
Yeah. It's not, you know, it's not just one location. It's about people, isn't it? How people perceive things, and you know,
Very.
and having this, you know, understanding. And as long as you've got that respect there, you should be okay.
Very much so. Do you, as we start July, head into the into a deeper part of the hour? Oh yeah. Sandra says it's a very interesting place, really positive. very
mean,
positive energy.
exactly. I mean, if you're empathic, if you're sensitive to energy and you go there, you will immediately feel both of these type of, energies pulling at you. I guess in some ways they pull at you to see what side you fit best.
Huh. So it's supposed to be a place of mystical magic, energy, etc. Um, did you feel that when you guys were there?
Yeah, as I said, it is that is there. There's a lot of people that go there. A lot of people go there to find themselves spiritually, but a lot of people also go there to reinvent themselves. They can then, whilst they're there, because it's such a, you do have respect for each other, but when they go there, some people are lost when they go there, so they're trying to search that other part of themselves, in a way like an alchemization of themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like places like that, where there's a lot of high energy and so forth, are, they're kind of a reservoir of healing for a lot of people along the way. And so I'm sure that along the line of people who are abductees and contactees, I'm sure there's quite a few that go there to kind of bask in that healing energy um, of areas like that. So, what are some things that you would like to leave with us for final thoughts tonight, Michael? Because this has been quite an interest. Just the fact that you literally brought up the exact story that I would turn to before we even started talking tonight. This has been quite an interesting experience tonight. Um, what are some things that you would like to kind of bring to the forefront tonight and leave us with?
I mean, I just, when we were talking about experiences, one of the experiences I had, like, where my mum was involved was one when my dad passed. My mum, she had a single bed, and there was a spare bed in the same room as her. And I remember, in the nighttime, as I explained in my book, I used to go up and sit on this other bed, and we used to chat about the day, how day was, and she used to listen to a particular radio station, which had things to do with the paranormal and spiritual subjects on them, because she was very spiritual as well in her own way, even though she grew up in a strict Roman Catholic environment, But I remember going up and on this particular night and speaking to her, again, it was a hot summer's night. And the room itself was dark apart from a light shining in from the landing, the hallway upstairs. And I remember laying back on the bed, but not the way where the headboard would be. I'd put my feet there and lay the other way because I wanted to look basically where the windows were. So the light was behind me, and I remember at some point, I remember closing my eyes and then opening my eyes. But when I opened them, I remember seeing a bright light shining down where where the windows were. It was a really brilliant light, which would be above, just above where the room was, where the bedroom was. And I remember then being on the bed, and the bed was close to, like on the wall, there was a radiator there as well, mounted on the wall. And I remember my body, when I was laying there, my body become paralyzed. So I experienced this paralysis at the time. I mean, my mum was just literally on the other side, listening to the radio. And I remember then experiencing a loud buzzing and ringing in my ears, but it was actually in my head. I could hear it. And then, and I remember at some point rising up off the bed. So I actually come up off the bed.
Wow.
And I was actually being pulled. It felt like my body was being pulled towards where the light was. And so I felt myself moving, but I couldn't move. But I felt my body being moved, directed. But at that time, I heard a voice in my head basically saying, you know, to come with them. I don't know who they were. You know, if I could guess it, I'd probably, because of my experiences, I'd probably say it was the Greys, but you know, I can't say for sure. I don't know. But I obviously was trying to fight this, and I was like saying, I don't want. In my head, I was saying, I don't want to go. I'm not ready to go. And then the moment I said that, I remember going boom, you know, coming down onto the bed really hard. And then I remember the light, just like it's almost like a switch being switched off, like, you know, someone's turned the light off. And then when that happened, I was able to move again. But when I did, I got up, but I felt my whole body was hot. You know, I was actually sweating. And I think maybe it's because I was trying to, again, break from the paralysis. And, you know, when all this was happening, you know, my mum didn't move, you know. And I remember then stumbling slightly towards where the window was. It was opened. And I looked up and I was looking around at the sky, you know, where there was no light. I couldn't see no source of light, or even in the distance where it come from. It was black, you know. It's just, you know, like just black everywhere. So I couldn't see what it was. And then I remember I went back to the bed and lay back down on the bed. But I remember I never, which was odd, that when looking back, I never said anything to my mum, and she never said nothing to me. And then I just fell into a sleep. But then the next morning, I remember my mum was in the kitchen and she was like peeling potatoes at the sink. And I was outside. I remember eating breakfast out of a bowl. And I was looking out and I was just thinking about what happened in the nighttime. So then I then put the question to my mum and I said, Mum, I said, did you see anything or hear anything when I was there? And she said that she see the light shining and she heard a buzzing sound. And then she said that she could see me rising up off the bed. And she said that she then experienced the paralysis herself. And then she heard in her head a voice said to her, do not interfere, go to sleep, you know. And then I don't know if she went to sleep, but she told me she couldn't move, she couldn't do anything, but she certainly did see the light, heard the buzzing, and then see the process of me being lifted up, you know. So that was, I think, one time when I was actually with her, where she actually was in the same immediate location as me, having this, you know, not that experience, but being part in some way of the experience, you know. But she didn't. But again, you know, with my parents, they didn't seem to have that reaction, what you would think they would have, you know, like, oh my God, or that didn't happen. It wasn't denial, and it wasn't any of those things. It was just like a casual demeanor, like, okay, these things happen, you know. So that was unusual as well.
Do you feel like your mom may have been an experiencer as well?
She did say to me, because during World War II, you know, she was part of them. She built Lancaster bombers, you know, and she had a, you know, very high IQ, you know. This is another thing you find in these projects. They choose children when they do the tests, you know. It could be the Monarch Solutions, or even here, Tavistock Institute in London, that carry out these particular tests. They often find that the children that they choose have very high intellects. You know, you're looking at from 170, 180 onwards. And you often find this, though, when you look into military intelligence, into the agencies, MI5, MI6, the CIA, FBI, a lot of their operatives, whether they're analysts in an office, you know, or they're field agents, they have this level of intelligence and other type of creative, you know, abilities that they look for in these particular people. And these children in the SSP, they seem to have this type of creativity and this working outside of the box, you know, finding other solutions, and very much to do with these IQs. But when they're in the projects, they remove this level of ability from you. So they place it in a certain place, you know, and then they use codes to tap into it. They enhance it to tap into it, to use it. but they don't allow you to use it yourself. Because I think by having having those abilities, you would, it's possible that you could go against their programming. So
Very
but my
much.
mum did have this level of intellect. So when she was a woman, she was working, during the war. She was working in a area, a location where there was a lot of men, and women worked in the munitions factory. So she worked in the munitions factory, building these particular craft, putting together, ammunition for the craft, and also the bombs. So, it's a very dangerous place as well. But because she showed merit and she was good at what she did, she was, she was promoted to the office where the men were, and that's not a big deal now, but in them times, it was a huge thing, but so having a woman working amongst the men in these offices, it was huge. But so she went on, to work in there. So, but what she told me is that when during the war she was evacuated to the countryside because of London being bombed quite a lot by the Germans. And I remember her telling me of an experience where she was living in one of the barns, and she woke up in the middle of the night. Something had scared her, and then she see this particular creature. She said standing at the foot of the bed, but sort of almost like it was kneeling down, and then stood up. And when she described it to me, it's the typical grey figure. She was frightened. She had missing time. And this was in Hereford. This was in the same area where, at the time, where you have now the Special Forces, SAS base,
Right.
And so she didn't realize at the time what it was. But I think, that would be a classic type abduction, because the being that she
Definitely.
described to me, she was just off the bat, this is what it looked like. But she didn't have the other type of knowledge like we do now, what these particular creatures are. So she was just telling me what she saw and what she experienced.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds.
So it's possible that she was.
Yeah, it sounds very, very typical of an abduction experience, and having an elevated IQ. Yeah, I would definitely guess that there's some stuff there. Michael, wow, you bring so much to the table. You really do, and give us a lot to think about, a lot to understand, and a lot of information that's very needed at this point. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on tonight and being
I
with
think
us.
there's lots of people, in the chat room here that have got they've got lots of experiences and lots of knowledge, between us, and we're all trying to work together to achieve the same objective. We got the same goal, all of us, regardless of our views. We're searching, we're looking, we're exploring, to try to find an answer and do something about it. So we're all working together.
Definitely so. Definitely so. I feel like there's a lot of people who are watching tonight who will watch later in the week, who are trying to find the answers to a lot of questions that they have. I'm going to bring you back on again, definitely, to
Cool. Okay.
yeah. Well, it's kind of one of those. You're kind of a gift that keeps on giving. You have so much information and so many things, so many experiences to share. And you're working on the second book at this point, which I'm anticipating it highly, because I'm telling you, I keep going back and rereading parts of High Strangeness, and I'm like, I can't wait to see what he puts in the next book.
I mean, I might write the second book. I might write it differently to the first, because in the first one, I do, in a way, I show my experiences show in detail, as you know, and with all the emotion. So I'm not sure if I will write it in a different way.
Whatever you do, I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful read and a very good experience for people. Guys, I encourage you, if you do not have his book yet, High Strangeness, A Lifetime of Alien and Paranormal Encounters, get a copy of it. There's so many things in this book that I've read and reread time and time again, that really not only I resonate with, but that are very enlightening and at times even some encouragement in all of the insanity. And I think that's a very important part of your story, Michael, is that even though there's a lot of very traumatic and unrestful things, there's also a story of survival and courage and strength. And I think that's one of the things that we can all resonate with your story.
Thank you, Daniel.
So I definitely want to bring you back on again soon, and go into some more of your experiences. If you will hang out for just a few moments, I'm going to close this out, and I'll be back with you backstage.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everyone in the chat room as well. Thank you.
Whew. Always an experience, a deep experience with Michael. I love and appreciate my friend for coming on, and I love and appreciate you guys for supporting, coming on, and being part of this tonight. I know there's always a lot of questions when it comes to the experiences with people who have been abducted or contactees. I know that it is always a moment of self-reflection with us when we start learning and we start experiencing things ourselves. So thank you again. I want to encourage you guys, do not forget to like, share, and comment. When the video posts, it will post as a permanent post on the channel soon. So go back and leave a comment there. Send folks over to watch this video. And if you have not subscribed yet and you're watching this video, please do so. Subscribers definitely help me go and grow, as does everything else. And also don't forget magical merch. If you go to magicaljourney.com, you'll find a page for the store. You'll also find all the information you need for any social media, how to contact me. There's a section now on how to email me about getting a reading from me. So please go to magicaljourney.com for that. And yes, thank you, Pam. And moderators, my moderators are amazing. Thank all of you. Pam, you are on it with those links always, girl. I love it. I love it. All right. I'm going to have Michael back again soon. I've got some other things coming up. Tuesday is the drop for interview. I have an interview Tuesday with, who do I have an interview with Tuesday? I forgot already. While I'm looking at that, I'll tell you too that Thursday is the Paranormal Journals. I am on the Paranormal Journals. I have every Thursday at 7:00. There is a premiere. I am in the chat for that. So I'm chatting with you guys while we're watching it, answering any questions you have about the case. The Paranormal Files is about paranormal events that I'm either researching or have researched in the past. And then, of course, my Friday night lives, 7 p.m. All of this is Central Time. 7 p.m. Central Time on Fridays is that. And then Tuesday, I honestly have drawn a complete blank what I plan on dropping because I have a few things in line. Ghost in Me. I know when I'm dropping this Tuesday, actually. This Tuesday, I will be dropping the interview that I did with Thomas Jones, the woke prophet. And I did that interview actually today, and I will be dropping it this Tuesday. Also coming up will be an interview I'm doing Saturday with Laura Risti. I always get her name wrong. Sorry, Laura. You know we've had this conversation about me and your name. I think I mess up everybody's name. Laura Risti and I will be discussing the Trini Gibson case. Again, Laura is considered the authority on Trini Gibson and her disappearance. So that interview will be coming up, and I will be dropping it on one of the future shows on Tuesday. So look forward to that. Meanwhile, you guys have a great rest of the weekend. It's the first weekend of 2025. Be safe, stay warm, and may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our past lives.